Friends, thank you very much for joining us. Great to have you with us. James, nice to see you.
Very good to see you too, Ian. Yeah.
Now, if you have come regularly week in, week out, it's fantastic to have you back. But one or two of you or more might be new to join us. So we probably ought to explain who we are. James, who are you?
My name's James Blandford Baker. I'm a vicar in two villages just to the north of Cambridge. Yeah.
Great. Now, every time you introduce yourself and say your full name, I want to accuse you of being posh. And every time I do that, you deny it. But you have got a double-barrel surname.
Yeah, but it doesn't make you posh, does it? I mean, lots of people have double-barrel surnames. It doesn't make them posh.
Do they?
No. What is posh anyway? Can you define posh for me, Ian?
Well, having a double-barrel surname for a start.
Well, and that, if you're going to make it like that, then I mean that's just not reasonable, is it?
I know. But you probably ought to know who I am as well.
Yeah, who are you?
I'm
without the double-barrel name, obviously.
I have no double-barrel name, no, and because I'm not posh, you see, James.
I'm not even going to try.
I'm half Irish.
So, yeah, of course you are.
There we go. So, I don't know whether that does make me posh or does. I live in Nottingham, and I teach and I write a blog, and I do some academic stuff and pastoral stuff as well. So I'm associate minister at St Nick's in Nottingham. So there we go. That's who we are. Now, James, especially for those people who are new, there are 4 things we love them to do.
Yeah.
In response to the blog, don't we?
We do, and we'd love you to click like on the videos if you like them. That helps, and do subscribe to the Sophidzo channel.
So we can see you next week as well if you're.
Yeah, you'll get a notification. Do share on the social media. Just click the link below the videos, and do comment on them. We love to get comments, and we had some great comments, and
we had some nice encouraging comments last week, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. People were really kind and encouraging. So thank you very much to those of you who wrote in.
But you can also sort of use the comments to join in the conversation. And also there's a link to this video on my blog as well. And we often have good discussions on the comments there as well. So
yeah.
Great. Anyway, so good to have you with us. Now, James, where are we in the lectionary?
We are in Matthew chapter 18, verses 21 to 35.
We are, again, second time in Matthew 18.
Yeah, so we're kind of following on from last week where we looked at just immediate preceding passage. And in the calendar, it's Trinity 15th Sunday after Trinity. So, yeah.
We are counting down towards, of course,
we are.
Advent and the new lectionary year.
I know, we are. It's all very exciting.
Switch it from Matthew to Mark then, so that'll be interesting.
We will, yeah.
But we've got a little way to go in Matthew yet. Yeah. Now, I find this is a really fascinating passage. So this is the story of Peter asking Jesus, Lord, how often will my brother sin against me and I forgive him? How often should I forgive my brother? There's lots of fascinating things. Now, this is actually it's really important. It actually becomes really important, doesn't it, to recognize that this passage is part of Matthew 18.
Yeah, because Jesus has been tackling, the whole issue of what do you do when someone sins? Yeah. What is the response? What is your care for the sinner? So on and so forth. So with this part, last week we were particularly looking about how the sinner might be restored, and so on. Here the emphasis is rather more on the sinned against and their response. So we're getting kind of 2 angles on this issue. Yeah. For our relationships, which obviously is critical in the life of any community.
Yeah. And it is interesting, isn't it? There's this change of focus, and I think we'll come back, probably later on in the conversation about why pastoring is so important. I think it is interesting that these whole things are really living issues, and you can see why. In a sense, this section here in Matthew is called the sort of ecclesiastical chapter, in the sense that it's about life in the ecclesia. I was walking the dog yesterday, and I bumped into somebody, and we had a very civil chat. The difficulty was that this was a person who some years ago had said to me in front of someone else, I don't think your ministry is worth much. You don't understand the congregation we're part of, and I think you should go somewhere else.
Gosh.
So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. It's very real, isn't it?
It is, and I kind of feel, I do, as I just recite that, as I share that with you.
You feel it, yeah.
And so I think we need to recognize these are really, that's not the worst thing anyone could say to you, but when you're ordained, that's kind of
it is. I think the things that attack your ministry can be deeply wounding, and often you know, with people that you see day in, day out in
Yeah,
your
you can't
ministry.
avoid them.
Can't
No.
avoid them. No. So the
Yeah.
challenge is very, very clear here,
Yeah.
and knowing what to do, what God demands of us, how we need to think about it is really,
Yeah.
really important. As it is for, I mean, others. I mean, I think one of the real challenges I know in my pastoral ministry is with those who've been, you know, really badly abused or whatever in their life, and you know, the whole question of forgiveness. Perhaps particularly if somebody, the person who abused them is now no longer alive,
Yeah.
is really, really tough, because so often we can sound as though
Yeah.
in asking for forgiveness it means that what happened doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So there's some real challenges here.
Yeah.
Absolutely, no doubt about that at all.
I didn't get it out of my cupboard, but you just reminded me, actually, in saying that, there was a very good Grove booklet from years ago in the spirituality series,
Yeah,
called How Forgiveness Works. And it makes
Yeah.
that point, and maybe I'll try and put the link if assuming
Yeah.
it's available. And it makes the point that forgiveness is not saying what
Yes.
happened doesn't matter. It's
No.
about our attitude to what's happened.
Yeah.
And I think your comment about death is really significant as well. If you've ever taken the funeral, as I have, of someone who was abusive to members of the family, and you've got the members of the family sitting there in front of you.
Yes.
And one of the realities at the funeral is to recognize that actually the challenge is that death brings a finality. You cannot now say things to that person that you might have wanted to say, because the opportunity is gone. So
yeah, absolutely.
Oh, gosh, well, that's sort of the pastoral context. We probably ought to dive into the text, shouldn't we?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't
dive
it?
into the text and look at some of those issues, and then come back out and revisit those.
Yeah. And in a sense, the text kind of if we do dive straight into it, I mean, I think we dive straight in at the level of the pastoral. I mean, it's Peter, you know, Peter asks Jesus, Lord, if my brother sins against me, how often should I forgive? So in a sense, Peter is, I think, really, as so often in Matthew, he's being the spokesman, isn't he, for the disciples? But he's asking that question which nobody else in the room is asking, but everybody wants to ask.
Everyone's thinking.
Everybody's thinking it, yeah. And I think, you know, just given what we talked about in terms of the pastoral encounters we've had, this is what's on people's minds. I mean, it's a question to which people really do want to know the extent of their responsibility.
Now, I don't think I commented it on in a blog discussion, which we'll post tomorrow. If you're watching this on the day we posted this, the next blog post. I've just been struck afresh by the fact that by the terms in which Peter couches the question, Lord, how often if my brother sins, or brother or sister sins against me? So isn't it interesting that following on from the first half of the chapter we discussed last time, immediately the context is relationship. And the kinship relationship of the community.
Peter personalizes it and individualizes it, doesn't he? Very, 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 very clearly. So it's me, and what, you know, if against me, what should I do? I mean, I just by way of illustration, I mean, there was a when I was at school, we had a boy called Matthews, and the physics teacher was called Mr. Harrison, and Matthews was a complete waster. You know, he never did any work, and he put his hand up one day and said, "Mr. Harrison, what's the pass mark for our end of year exam?" And Harrison just absolutely flew off the handle at him and said, "That's typical of you, Matthews. You always want to know the minimum amount of work you've got to do." But actually, all of us were sitting there thinking, well, we'd quite like to know what the pass mark is. You know, so it's really interesting that this sort of spokesperson, you know, is a really important function, and Peter does it so often in Matthew.
So do you think that's a good reason why Peter mentions that 7? Has he just plucked that out of the air?
No, I don't think he can have plucked that out. I mean, that's far too biblical a number, isn't it? And one suspects there's some background in rabbinic Judaism about this.
I think I mentioned on the blog. There is a rabbinical text which says that you should forgive somebody 3 times. That was a reasonable
right. Okay.
So it's almost as if sort of, you know, Peter takes that and he sort of extends it and says, well, okay, maybe 3 is generous, but maybe 7 is the, you know, the perfect number, and isn't that it? And draw the line. Yeah,
maybe he thinks this. From what I've heard of Jesus, this might be acceptable to him.
Yeah,
but actually, because three feels like quite a lot. Actually, you know, if it's the same sort of sin against you 3 times. I mean, if that chap who spoke to you had on 3 separate occasions said that to you, and that would be really challenging, wouldn't it? I mean, so often we we only experience once. But yeah.
And of course, Jesus' response is, well, there's some uncertainty about it in terms of text.
What's the number mean? Yeah.
Yes, does it mean 77 times, or does it mean 70 times 7? But the word is related to it's hebdomicon. Well, I can't pronounce it. Hebdomiconcutus. The only reason I'm familiar with the number is that Oxford University, of course, has a hebdomadal council which meets every 7.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay.
So if you ever come across a hebdomadal meeting, you'll know it's meeting 7 times.
Yeah.
Every 7 something. So anyway.
But of course, the point is not actually the precise meaning of the number.
Indeed.
It's way beyond what anything you can. It's beyond what you can count. You can't keep a tally. No. It's basically, yeah.
And of course, we're now plunging into the sort of. I don't know how accurate we say this is a sort of characteristic Jewish hyperbole, but certainly it's characteristic of Jesus' teaching, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're moving into a sort of a bizarre world of hyperbole, which actually, I mean, it's interesting that this whole story that he then tells.
Yeah.
Which, okay, speculation, improvisation. This is a bad idea. I'm going to say this is unique to Matthew.
It is, yeah. I think it is.
Thank you. It looks like it to me. But that we suddenly plunge into a world of hyperbole and absurdity, and it is interesting that this. I mean, there must be people at the back sort of rolling the eyes at this, because the whole scenario, although it has realistic elements to it, it is a bit absurd, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, you've got this 77 times thing, and you only got these eye-watering amount of money, which the slave owes the master. I mean, 10,000 talents is whoa, isn't it? I mean, it is eye-watering. I mean, it's what would it be in modern life? Millions, billions?
Now we're just galloping ahead of ourselves. Just to notice, I mean, some commentators say this isn't the teaching of Jesus. This is from somewhere else, and it's sort of been added in composition, which I always think is a really curious suggestion. In that, 2 observations. One is this is a great story, and whoever made this up is a bit of a genius storyteller.
Yeah.
The second thing is, what's really interesting is it really harmonizes with Jesus' teaching elsewhere.
Yeah.
So the idea that this wasn't teaching of Jesus but was made up by somebody is amazing, because we now have a completely anonymous literary genius who also happens to be able to tie in their storytelling with the theology of Jesus elsewher, which is pretty impressive, really, isn't it?
It would be very impressive, yeah. And
here's an idea. Maybe it was actually Jesus.
The simple answer is usually the right one. And usually Matthew introduces it with a classic formula, doesn't he?
Well, that's the other interesting thing about it. Yeah,
it does. So
therefore, the kingdom of now, there's 2 interesting things about that. One is the kingdom of heaven may be compared to, which when we looked at chapter 13, that was the less common way. It's actually the way that Jesus introduced the parables of the kingdom more in Mark and Luke.
Yeah,
well, he does it once, but whereas in Matthew 13, when we look at those parables, Jesus most often said the kingdom of heaven is like.
Yeah.
But the other thing that strikes me as well is that, again, we had a bit of a debate on chapter 13 about, is the kingdom of heaven like the scenario, or is the kingdom of heaven like the individual? And I think there's a good case to say, look, it's the whole situation here, which Jesus is using as a comparison of the kings. So the kingdom of heaven is like a sower who goes and sows in a field. The kingdom of heaven is like a pearl merchant who's looking for a pearl, and so on. So, and again, we have the same thing, don't we? The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle his accounts, but actually the point is not the king so much as the scenario.
It's the comparison, isn't it? And actually, there isn't. One of the dangerous ways of reading most parables, and particularly I think this one, actually, because for various reasons, which we'll no doubt get into, is trying to look at an allegorical one-to-one, connection between the stuff of the kingdom and the things of this parable, and that is not how this kind of metaphor works. Like all metaphors, there's the like and there's the not like any simile, there's the like and the not like. But
yeah, and it's interesting how widespread that is. I mean, I was just at an academic conference last weekend, and even there, someone was saying, well, God is likened to a man who goes and destroys his enemy and burns his city down. So that's not a nice picture of God. Now, there might be some challenging things there, but again, it's just making the mistake of saying that this is like allegorical. So this is exactly how much is 10,000 talents?
Well, it's a lot of money. I mean, it's maybe a lifetime's earnings.
I think so.
Maybe more
I think
than
I've
that.
somebody who's
really well off.
Somewhere, haven't I?
It is eye-watering. I think.
So we've got a denarius, which we often hear talked about.
It's 100 denarii, isn't it?
In verse 28, 100 denarii. So a denarius is typically a day's wages.
It is.
Although that did change later on. Inflation was a bit of a problem in the Roman Empire as well as it is today. And a talent is actually a measure of weight.
Yeah.
Which is something like a half a kilogram of silver. It's some translations talk about gold, but actually a talent was normally
it was silver. Yeah, I mean the new RSV has a helpful footnote saying that it was worth more than 15 years' wages.
Yeah, I think I've guessed 20 years' wages. Now, of course, in a world where life expectancy for adults was about 50 years old, then that's basically your whole working life, I think, isn't it?
But 10,000 times 20 means you'd have to live an awful long time to.
Yeah, it does actually. It is
an eye-watering amount of money.
It is.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds you of stories about. There was a story a few years ago, wasn't it, about a trader who trashed a whole investment of his company. So it's that kind of amount. I do like the fact that when I was a teenager, I came across the Living Translation, which is very different from the New Living Translation, which was a paraphrase, and it's very American, and it said, "Gee, he owed him $1 million." And then the other guy, the servant, owes the guy $5. Right, just drawing out the contrast. But of course, in the 1970s, $1 million was quite a lot, whereas nowadays, $1 million.
This is chicken feed, isn't it? Well, not to me, but anyway, to some.
Well, they'd have to say. Well, anybody in the south of England who owns a house is a millionaire. So
quite.
But you'd have to say billions of dollars now.
You would. But it is hyperbole. This is the point, isn't it? It's something unimaginably large. And clearly, therefore, completely unrealistic to be a debt that can be repaid.
Yeah. Now, this is where we get into this interesting question about the extent to which how do we read this as a parable of the kingdom and not as an allegory? So, the man owes the king a debt which he cannot repay.
Yeah.
Is that a picture of our relationship with God? We owe a debt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And the debt has been paid for us.
Yeah.
As that excellent Graham Kendrick song.
Yeah.
So there is correspondence. It isn't an allegory, but there is correspondence.
No, then of course you immediately come up against a problem for that correspondence, because the king then orders the slave to be sold and his wife and his possessions and all of that sort of thing, and you end up saying, well, how would a loving God do that? That's not like God, is it?
Yes, at the end of the story. Yeah. Okay, so we have to read it. We have to read it well.
We do.
So but again, here's the interesting thing: that the servant falls on his knees, imploring him, "Have patience with me, I'll pay you everything," which of course he can't do.
No.
And out of compassion.
That's an interesting word here, isn't it? In the parable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
because this is
the splagnithomai. This is the man is moved in his guts.
Yeah, which is how Jesus is so often described in response to people in need.
Yes, that's right. The best example of that, I love it in Philippians 1, where Paul says, in the Authorized Version, "I love you with the bowels of Christ."
Yeah. Yes.
Which is it's a literal translation of that. I have I'm deeply moved with compassion for you.
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting, the idea of loving people with the bowels of Christ. That's quite itself is quite a vivid image, isn't it? So, yeah. So, and he released him and forgave him the debt. Again, one of the interesting sort of observations or challenges to this is, of course, there's no mention of the cross here. If it is a picture of but the point here is that the king
is bearing
the cost of the debt.
Yeah, which is absolutely a cross-shaped idea.
And of course, the same is true even more so in the parable of the prodigal son and the forgiving father.
Yeah.
But the father is the one who takes on the shame and the cost and the So when the same servant went out, he found. Now this is really interesting, isn't it, Pastor? So this guy's been forgiven this huge debt. Then he sees his fellow servant who owes him $5, 100 denarii. Well, 100 denarii is not nothing, is it?
No,
it's not. It isn't, and that's interesting. It isn't nothing. Actually, it isn't $5. It is 100 denarii. If it's 100 days' wages, that's 3.5 months, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that isn't nothing.
No.
And he begins to choke. It's very, it can be a cartoon like, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, yes. You can
He's-
actually, you can actually see it. And I think one of the things here that strikes me is so utterly believable, in the sense, something that's a very realistic element of this parable,
yeah,
is the failure of the first slave to see the parallel with the second slave.
yes,
And I think I know for myself, I'm very, very good at receiving the good things of other people, but they're not thinking of how I might be similarly generous, whether it's forgiving or just simple generosity to others, and thinking, well, okay, so allowing what is being good that is being done to me to change me, and allow that to become, and I think that kind of blind spot is something that many, many of us have, and you see it all around, actually. And there's kind of almost a sense in the secular world of people thinking, well, it's just good fortune. I got lucky with whatever, why I'm prosperous, or made a fortune, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they need to provide such opportunities for others or whatever. Of course, there are wonderful examples where people do that, but I think generally people don't make that that link very easily. So the parable is very good on that.
it is. And there is I might have mentioned this before some time ago. One of the YouTube channels I like to follow is called Veritasium.
Oh yeah,
and it's an Australian guy who's based in the States who does science stuff, but he does a very interesting video about our egocentric bias. And he's done research, or he cites psychological research, which shows that people always overestimate the things that they do, and they always underestimate the contribution that others make. So, for instance, just a little classic thing, when you ask men and women who does most of the washing up and the hoovering, the housework, usually the men always overestimate what their contribution has been, and the total adds up to more than 100%.
Yes.
But also, I mean, he's making a serious point about society where the statistics show that people who end up being well off, basically they get a lucky break, but those who have ended up at the top of the society uniformly say, oh, people make progress by their own effort. It's demonstrably not true in their own case. And he says actually has a seriously distorting effect on society. It's a slightly different issue here, but you're right. It is this sort of, I think, this egocentric bias we have. And that actually it goes back to Peter's original observation, which is that he's looking at it from his own point,
his own perspective. How often do I have to make the effort to do this, and at what point can I be released from it?
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, what's really interesting again is Jesus as a great storyteller, is that the language of the forgiven servant to the first servant he won't forgive absolutely parallels the language of the first half. So it replays. So Jesus is drawing out the parallel here.
Yeah, he absolutely hitting us between the eyes with it, really. Yeah.
And then I love the fact that the other servants, the other slaves, hear this and they get really distressed. They've overheard this, the injustice of it, and that's where they sneak off and go and tell they whistleblow. They whistleblow to
they're whistleblowers.
To the master, the king, who's now called master.
Good for them.
Again, lots of interesting little hints here. So it's a king, and now he's called the Kurios. So that's another little interesting thing to notice. And then in his anger, the master delivered him to the... Now, this is a very interesting word, isn't it? And how it's been translated, verse 34. In his anger, in anger, the master delivered him to the...
torturers or tormentors. Yeah.
It is, I know. Quite a few English translations soften this, don't they? I've got in the ESV, it says jailers, and then a little asterisk, and a footnote says, the Greek says torturers.
Yeah, and there's been a bit of a history of English translations softening this.
Yeah.
And I notice even the NIV, I don't know whether it's trying to soften it or not, but it feels to me as though it might be. It says that handed over to the torturer, to the jailers, to be tortured. Well, the jailers don't appear in the text at all. It just says the torturers, which is very stark. And I suspect it's a reticence about an analogous kind of interpretation of the parable, an allegorical interpretation of the parable, where people think, well, if this applies to God, he wouldn't torture people, would he? So So let's not go there.
Yeah.
But it is, and it's the only place in the New Testament where this word torturous occurs. It's what we call a hapax legomenon. So it's quite it's a very deliberately chosen word. I would suggest.
You do get the word torment, a related word in Revelation.
Yeah.
But
This is quite personal, isn't it? Yeah.
But it is in Matthew's Gospel. Jesus does talk about the outer darkness and the place of wailing and gnashing
absolutely
stuff. So
yeah.
So also my heavenly Father will do to every one of you if you do not forgive your brother from your heart. Now, interestingly, when we talked about this before, one person commented on the blog and said, "But hang on a second, didn't the master forgive the servant? Therefore, how is he now undoing that?" But it is interesting, isn't it, that all the way through the New Testament, there's a sense of saying, yes, you are forgiven freely, but you need to live that out.
Yeah.
And if you refuse to live that out, if you refuse to actually live in that forgiveness, if you refuse to grant others the generosity and costly forgiveness that you yourself have received from the Father, there is a danger that you forfeit that. I mean, you find that language in Paul as well, to the Corinthians, where on the one hand he says, "Oh, God's done everything, God's blessed you, everything you've got," and then he says, "Well, you fools, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
You're in danger here if you're not living it out.
Yeah, I mean, I've just been rereading Narnia the last couple of weeks, and one of the things that Aslan says to the talking beasts is that they don't continue to act like talking beasts. I act like they are in relationship with him. They will cease to be talking beasts and
they'll lose their ability.
They lose that ability to be, to speak. And I think there's something like that kind of, in view, really.
Yeah. That kind of brings us back to some of those, pastoral questions that we raised at the beginning, and the really difficult cases. I mean, you mentioned some very difficult cases of forgiveness. I suppose one of my two immediate reflections are, we do have to read this parable in terms of my orientation as someone against whom my brother has sinned and the forgiveness. We have to read this alongside the previous teaching, where if someone sins, then the job of the ekklesia, the community, is to rightly hold them to account. So this parable, the danger is you take this parable on its own and you say to someone who has been deeply wounded or deeply hurt, saying, well, your job is to forgive them. And actually you can't say that in detachment from the responsibility of the community to hold to account those who harm others, on the one hand. I suppose the other thing that comes out for me as well is that I need to read this and hear it and live it myself before I apply it to others.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is of all these situations. I mean, I think one of the things that I've been learning recently is to bless those who persecute me. Those who undermine my ministry or whatever or whatever. And I think that is a really interesting experience because you're in a different position when you speak to others if you're doing that actively yourself. Because you know what it's doing to you and you know what the cost of it is, you know what good it's doing for you, and hopefully for the other person. But it's a classic case of don't preach what you haven't experienced, isn't it?
No, we can't. Well, you can't do that. So that's that saying. Somebody said that harboring resentment is like swallowing poison and expecting it to harm the other person.
Yeah. I think Desmond Tutu has a, he always reckoned that apartheid oppressed white people as much as,
Yes, but and you see, he was in a position to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. No white person could say that. Only he could say that. Yeah.
And on the blog, I just mentioned the example a few years ago now of Maureen Greaves. It really had the headlines.
Oh yes, amazing story.
Whose widow Alan Greaves was brutally and senselessly murdered on Christmas Eve as he was on his way to play the organ for midnight mass at a church. And I mean, her example and her testimony was remarkable. And she says this. She says, "It seems so easy to say that I've forgiven them, but it's probably one of the hardest things in my life that I've had to do. And yet," she says, "having done it and repeatedly seeking to do it, I've found that I've benefited. I've not gone to bed with them in my mind. I've not gone over and over and over the shocking feelings about them. I've not gone over and over in my mind the replay of what happened to Alan." And she says that she hoped that both men who were convicted of the murder would find some sense of true sorrow for what they've done. Perhaps they'll find while they're in prison a journey they can go on where they will be able to think of what they've done and turn away from such things and start leading better lives. That's an extraordinary testimony, isn't it, to the grace in her life as a result of actually following this command of Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely. Extraordinary.
Yeah, amazing. James, thank you very much for talking about these things with me. And I hope, friends, I hope you find that that's sort of useful, both an insight into the text and some of the issues around taking Jesus' teaching seriously. Friends, don't forget, what are the 4 things, James?
Yeah, do like, do subscribe, do share, do comment. I suspect quite a lot of people might want to comment this week because there are a lot of personal situations which we all try to live with, try to live out the teaching of Jesus. So it'd be interesting to see what people have to share.
Somebody once said there are hard sayings of Jesus, and they fall into 2 groups: things that are hard to understand, and things that are easy to understand, just very hard to live by.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, James. Friends, lovely to see you. See you again next week.